Look carefully at your old pennies before you put them away. One small detail that most people never notice could make a huge difference. Today, we're uncovering the secrets that collectors look for in rare 1-cent coins. It may look like an ordinary coin you would find anywhere, but some 1-cent pieces have shocked collectors around the world. Behind this tiny coin is a story of history, mistakes, rarity, and the search for something truly special. Imagine reaching into an old jar of pennies, a dusty piggy bank, or a forgotten collection that has been sitting untouched for decades, only to discover that one tiny copper-colored coin could be the reason collectors suddenly become interested in what you own. Most people see a 1-cent coin as something with almost no buying power, something that gets tossed into a drawer or left behind at the checkout counter. But the world of coin collecting has proven time and time again that appearances can be incredibly deceiving. Hidden among billions of ordinary pennies are a handful of remarkable coins that collectors have spent years searching for. And one of the most fascinating examples is the 1974 South Lincoln 1-center. While millions of these coins were produced, certain examples stand far above the rest, attracting attention at major auctions and commanding prices that most people would never imagine for a single penny. The incredible part is that many of these coins began their journey just like every other cent, quietly waiting for someone to recognize their true importance. So before you spend another penny or ignore that old coin collection in your home, stay with me until the very end, because the story of the 1974 South Lincoln Center might completely change the way you look at the smallest coin in your pocket. The story begins during the early 1970s, a fascinating period in American history. The United States was experiencing economic changes, rising inflation, and increasing costs for producing everyday goods. Despite these challenges, the Lincoln cent remained one of the country's most recognizable coins. Every single day, millions of Americans used pennies to buy groceries, pay for newspapers, or receive change from local stores. Few people stopped to think about the incredible journey each coin had taken before reaching their hands. Behind every penny was a carefully planned process involving artists, engineers, mint employees, and powerful machines capable of producing thousands of coins every minute. Among these coins was the 1974 South Lincoln Center, struck at the famous San Francisco Mint, a facility known for producing some of the highest quality coins in the United States. Unlike many circulating pennies produced at other mints, the San Francisco Mint had developed a reputation for creating beautiful proof coins. These were not ordinary coins intended for daily commerce. Instead, they were specially manufactured using polished dies and specially prepared planchets. Every step of the production process focused on achieving remarkable detail, brilliant mirrored surfaces, and sharp designs that would impress collectors. Workers carefully handled these coins to prevent damage, knowing they were destined for collector sets rather than cash registers. Because of this extra attention, many collectors consider San Francisco proof coins among the most attractive examples of American coinage. At first glance, the design of the 1974 South Lincoln Center appears familiar. On the front, the portrait of Abraham Lincoln looks calmly toward the right, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This portrait became one of the longest-running designs in United States coin history, remaining on the cent for generations. Above Lincoln appears the famous motto, "In God We Trust." To the left is the word liberty, while the date 1974 appears on the right alongside the small, but incredibly important S mint mark. That tiny letter may seem insignificant to most people, but for experienced collectors, it immediately tells an important story about where the coin was produced and often hints at the special quality associated with San Francisco issues. Turn the coin over, and another iconic design comes into view. The reverse features the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Frank Gasparo, this reverse was remarkable because if you looked closely enough, you could actually see the tiny seated figure of Lincoln inside the memorial between the central columns. It became one of the few coins in history to feature the same individual on both sides. Around the memorial appear the inscriptions United States of America, E pluribus unum, and the denomination 1 cent. For decades, Americans carried this miniature work of art without realizing just how much detail was packed into such a small coin. The coin itself was made primarily from brass, containing approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it the rich reddish appearance that collectors often admire. Each coin weighed about 3.11 grams and measured roughly 19 millimeters in diameter. These specifications remained standard for Lincoln cents of the era before later composition changes occurred during the early 1980s. Although these measurements seem simple, collectors know that even the smallest variation in weight, composition, or manufacturing quality can sometimes point toward an unusual and highly collectible coin. This is where the story begins to grow even more interesting. Not every 1974 South Lincoln Center is worth a fortune. In fact, the vast majority are relatively common, especially if they have been handled or damaged over the years. But within every large mintage, tiny differences can separate an ordinary coin from one that collectors eagerly compete to own. Some proof coins display extraordinary cameo or deep cameo contrast, where Lincoln's portrait appears frosted against mirror-like fields. These spectacular examples require exceptional striking quality and careful preservation. The stronger the contrast and the cleaner the surfaces, the more desirable the coin becomes among advanced collectors. Even more exciting are the rare mistakes that occasionally escape the mint's quality control. Throughout history, no manufacturing process has ever been completely perfect. Despite the incredible precision of modern coin production, tiny imperfections sometimes occurred during die preparation or striking. Certain proof coins developed unusual double details, while others exhibited striking anomalies or die varieties that specialists continue studying decades later. These unusual pieces often become the stars of major collections because they represent something unexpected, a fascinating accident preserved forever in metal. Imagine finding a small 1-cent coin hiding in an old collection, a forgotten jar, or even mixed among the change you use every day, and discovering that this tiny piece of metal is not just another ordinary penny. For decades, millions of people have ignored coins like this, believing they are only worth 1 cent. But the world of coin collecting has shown us something incredible. Sometimes the smallest coins can hold the biggest surprises. And today, we are looking at one particular penny that has captured the attention of collectors across the United States. The 1984 Lincoln 1-cent coin from Philadelphia, the coin with no mint mark. At first glance, this coin may look completely ordinary. It carries the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln, the same design that Americans have seen for generations. Billions of Lincoln cents have been produced, and most examples from the 1980s are still common today. But hidden among these ordinary-looking coins is a fascinating story of manufacturing mistakes, collector discoveries, and a rare variety that turned an everyday penny into a serious numismatic treasure. The question that has excited collectors for years is simple. Could one of these coins sitting unnoticed in your possession be something special? The story of the 1984 Lincoln cent begins during a major transition period for American coins. The early 1980s were a time of change at the United States Mint. Rising copper prices had made the production of traditional copper pennies increasingly expensive, leading the mint to change the composition of the Lincoln cent after 1982. By 1984, regular Lincoln cents were being produced with a copper-plated zinc composition, creating a lighter coin compared with the older copper cents many people remembered. The 1984 Philadelphia cent weighs approximately 2.5 grams and measures about 19 millimeters in diameter. Millions of these coins entered circulation. They traveled through cash registers, wallets, vending machines, and countless hands across America. Nobody knew that among these massive numbers of pennies, a small number contained a dramatic mistake that would later become one of the most recognized Lincoln cent varieties of the modern era. The front of the coin features the famous portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, originally created by designer Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces right, with the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" surrounding his portrait. The date 1984 appears below, and because this coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, there is no letter underneath the date. That missing letter is not an error. It is actually the identifying feature of Philadelphia coins from this period. For many beginners, the absence of a mint mark can seem unusual. They search for a tiny letter like D or S, and wonder if something is wrong. But experienced collectors understand that a blank space below the date tells an important part of the coin's history. It means the coin was produced in Philadelphia, one of the oldest and most important mint facilities in the United States. When you flip the coin over, you see the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959. This reverse shows the famous Washington, D.C. monument dedicated to Abraham Lincoln. Inside the memorial, a tiny image of Lincoln sitting in his chair can be seen with careful examination. Around the design are the words United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent. For most people, this is just another penny design. But collectors know that the real excitement often comes from what was never supposed to happen. During the production of coins, the United States Mint uses enormous machines and carefully prepared dies to strike thousands of coins every minute. These dies are created with incredible precision, but the process is not always perfect. Occasionally, problems occur during the creation of the dies themselves. When this happens, thousands of coins can sometimes be produced with unusual features before the problem is discovered. And this is exactly where the legendary 1984 Lincoln cent story begins. One of the most famous varieties connected to this coin is known as the 1984 double die obverse, often called the doubled ear variety. This is not simply a damaged coin or a coin that has been scratched. A true double die happens during the die-making process, creating a second impression of certain design details. On this variety, collectors look for noticeable doubling on Lincoln's ear, with additional doubling reported in areas such as the beard and bow tie. To an untrained eye, the difference can be easy to miss. The coin may look completely normal when viewed casually, but under magnification, the extra details become visible, revealing the unusual characteristics that make collectors excited. This is why coin experts always tell beginners one important thing. Never judge a coin only by its age or appearance. A coin does not become valuable simply because it is old. The real value often comes from rarity, condition, demand, and unique characteristics that separate it from millions of others. The 1984 Lincoln cent is a perfect example of this lesson. A normal circulated example may only be worth its face value, but a rare variety in excellent condition can attract strong attention from collectors and auction buyers. Certified examples of the double die obverse variety have appeared in auctions, with higher-grade specimens bringing significant prices because collectors compete for the finest examples available. And the most exciting part is that many collectors believe there are still undiscovered coins waiting to be found. Somewhere, inside an old jar, a forgotten album, or a family collection passed down through generations, a rare variety could still be hiding. But how exactly can you tell if your 1984 Lincoln cent is just a normal penny or something collectors are searching for? That is where the real treasure hunt begins. Imagine finding a small copper-colored coin hidden inside an old jar, a childhood coin collection, or a forgotten box in your home. At first, it looks like just another ordinary penny, something most people would ignore without a second thought. But what if that tiny coin had a story that collectors around the world still study today? What if a simple 1-cent piece from the 1990s could become a fascinating discovery because of a rare mistake, an incredible condition, or a detail that almost everyone misses? The truth is, not every 1993 Lincoln cent is rare, and millions were produced for everyday use. But coin collecting has always been about looking beyond the obvious. The smallest details can sometimes separate an ordinary coin from one that collectors are willing to search years to find. The 1993 Lincoln 1 cent from Philadelphia, with no mint mark, is a perfect example of how a common-looking coin can hold unexpected surprises. Before you spend another penny, take a closer look, because the difference between a normal coin and a collectible treasure can sometimes be hidden in tiny details that are invisible to the naked eye. The journey of the 1993 Lincoln cent begins in the early 1990s, a period when American coin production was changing rapidly. The United States Mint was producing billions of pennies every year because the 1-cent coin remained an essential part of everyday commerce. People used them in stores, saved them in jars, and carried them in pockets without thinking about their future collector value. In 1993, the Philadelphia Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents. These coins were created for circulation, meaning they were designed to move through the economy rather than sit inside collector cases. Because of the enormous number produced, most examples today are still easy to find. But the story becomes more interesting when we look at the coins that survived in exceptional condition or those that contain unusual minting characteristics. The first thing collectors notice about the 1993 Philadelphia Lincoln cent is the missing mint mark. Many beginners assume that every United States coin should have a letter showing where it was made. But Philadelphia coins traditionally carried no mint mark on many issues. That empty space below the date is actually a clue that tells collectors this coin was produced at the Philadelphia facility. On the front of the coin, we see the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln. This design was created by Victor David Brenner and first appeared on the Lincoln cent in 1909. More than a century later, Lincoln's image remains one of the most recognizable designs in American coin history. Above Lincoln's portrait are the words, "In God We Trust." To the left appears liberty, representing one of the most important ideas connected with American coinage. On the right is the date 1993, with no mint letter beneath it because this coin was struck in Philadelphia. But the real excitement for collectors often begins when they examine the tiny details. Turn the coin over, and you will see the Lincoln Memorial design. This reverse was introduced in 1959 and remained on the cent until the redesign in 2009. Created by Frank Gasparo, the design shows the famous Washington, D.C. monument dedicated to Abraham Lincoln. One fascinating detail is the tiny image of Lincoln inside the memorial. With a strong magnifying glass, collectors can see the small seated figure between the columns. This level of detail shows just how much artistry was placed into a coin that many people considered almost worthless. The 1993 Lincoln cent was made from a copper-plated zinc composition. Unlike older pennies that were mostly copper, these newer coins contained a zinc core covered with a thin copper layer. The coin weighs approximately 2.5 grams and has a diameter of about 19 millimeters. These changes helped reduce production costs but also created new challenges for collectors because zinc-based cents can be more vulnerable to damage, discoloration, and environmental problems over time. And this is where the hunt becomes exciting. When collectors search through 1993 Lincoln cents, they are not simply looking for an old coin. They are searching for something unusual. They look for coins with original bright red color, sharp details, perfect surfaces, and rare errors created during the minting process. A coin that spent decades untouched in a protected environment may look dramatically different from one that circulated for years. A circulated penny may have scratches, dark spots, and worn details, while a carefully preserved example can still shine like the day it left the mint. Professional collectors often send these coins to grading companies, where experts examine the condition, color, and quality. A higher grade can dramatically increase collector interest because truly flawless examples are much harder to find than ordinary circulated coins. But the biggest excitement comes from mistakes. The United States Mint uses extremely advanced technology, but producing billions of coins is a massive operation. With so many coins being struck every year, occasional errors can happen. A small problem with a die, a striking issue, or a production mistake can create a coin that looks different from every other example. For collectors, these mistakes are not imperfections to ignore. They are the reason some coins become famous. Some 1993 Lincoln cents have attracted attention because of unusual varieties and errors. Collectors examine areas like the lettering, the date, the Lincoln Memorial details, and the overall strike quality. Certain varieties connected to the 1993 cent series have become highly interesting to specialists, especially when found in exceptional condition. The amazing part is that many people never check these details. A person could have a handful of old pennies sitting in a drawer and never realize that one coin deserves a closer look. That is the magic of coin collecting. It is not just about money. It is about history, discovery, and the possibility that something overlooked for years could suddenly become important. And the search for the most impressive 1993 Lincoln cents continues. Collectors still examine old collections, unopened rolls, and forgotten jars hoping to uncover an example with the right combination of rarity, condition, and beauty. Because sometimes, the most surprising treasures are not found in expensive collections. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight.